Okay, there we go. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending in person as well as virtually. We're happy you're here. Thank you also for dealing with our technical issues. It's always an adventure when we are trying new things. But let me pull up my, center view. Pulling up my slides. You guys can see both of those. And okay, let me figure out how to share. I'm assuming that's sharing my screen. Presenter view. Nope. There we go. Share. Okay. I hope you guys can see this. Today, again, just welcome to the August Twin City Tableau user group. For today's agenda, we'll do a quick welcome, just a very welcome. We'll do a get to know a member, and then we've got two really awesome presentations today, one from Dan and one from Megan, and Dan's going to be talking about Tableau extensions in Python, using Python, and Megan's going to do some intro as well as some other things about the dynamic zone visibility, which I'm super excited for both, but very excited for to learn more about that. And then if there's any time left, we'll do best thing I learned or group therapy, which is, if you're new to this group, it's basically just if someone has a tip or trick or something that they want to share that they've learned recently, or if you have a problem that you are stuck on and want some folks to bounce some ideas off of. That's kind of what we're here for. All right, so to continue with the welcome, just want to call out some upcoming events. The first one, or actually, Serena, if you want to come up and talk about your collection of events. I'm super interested to hear about this AI headshot happy hour. I don't know. What is this?
Yeah, okay, so the AI headshot happy hour is exactly how it sounds. But also with the twist of like no one's ever done this before. So so the happy hour portion is the happy hour. The AI headshot portion of that is where so Moxie has done some like testing and like experimenting with some of these AI headshot generators, and we've learned some do's and some don'ts on how to get good results out of these, and also like we've compared 4 or 5 of these services and kind of rated them on a number of different data points. Like weird for a data person to do that. And so at the event is going to be the traditional like good food, drinks, good company, all that stuff. But we're also going to have different stations where you can go around and take the selfies that you will eventually use as your inputs. For we are going to provide a complimentary session to one of the generator, like our pick for these services, but you could literally use anyone or all of them, because you do get varied results. And then also we'll sprinkle in some discussion just around the considerations with AI in general, and like how to prepare yourself for the bias that's baked in.
Yeah.
And so good conversation there. The event is like a ladies first type of situation, just because it's hosted by She Talks Data and the Moxie Foundation. But guys are welcome too. But if we do get like 40 ladies, we'll bump you to the back. Like, no offense, we love you, but just ladies first in a sort of
supportive way.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then our next hug, yep. General Mills. That should be a fun one. The parking situation will be better for those of us that came in person.
Yeah.
And then 10-3 is another She Talks Data event that is just more of our traditional, where we bring in awesome ladies who work in the data industry, and they get to share their sort of journey and their learning and hindsights and stuff with us. So
awesome.
That's all.
Thank you. All right, so 2 other things on the screen, as you can see, are the dates for the next Tableau conference have been announced. If you haven't heard, it's April 29th through May 1st, and it's in San Diego this year, so it'll be nice to not be in Vegas. I don't know, like Vegas have a love-hate relationship, especially in summertime, but One thing I'll also call out that I've seen in the past is sometimes Tableau or certain organizations will post a like how to convince your boss to let you go kind of thing. And so if you really want to go, just Google, find something, use ChatGPT, I guess, to help you write a letter to help justify the cost for your organization. It's a really great place just to meet people as well as like be exposed to new ideas. And, you know, the devs on stage is always like a highlight for a lot of people learning about new features and how organizations can implement them. I'm sure AI will be another hot topic next year because it will continue to be a hot topic for a while. And then over here on the right, I just wanted to call out, if you aren't aware, there is like a central spot for finding other Tableau user groups. And it's not just geographic based. So there are several that are either industry or Tableau calls it belonging. If you can read that there, which I think is really cool. And so those are initiatives around like people of certain like minority groups. Yeah, thank you. And like, so even if you live out in the middle of nowhere or don't want to travel, there is a Tableau group for you. And as well as, again, it does provide an opportunity for folks to live anywhere and learn from anyone. All right. Does anyone have any other announcements or just things that they want to share?
Yeah, and I don't actually know if people can unmute themselves.
Okay.
If you can,
put it in the chat.
If you can, great, do it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, cool. I just want to test for later, so.
All right. Okay, well, if anyone thinks of anything, feel free to pop it in the chat. There's always cool stuff going on in the area. All right, so next we've got get to know a member. Would love to do this for one in person and one virtual, if possible. Again, sounds like folks can unmute themselves. So if you want to unmute yourselves, please go ahead for that.
Should we start with somebody in the room, maybe? Get things rolling? Yeah,
we can definitely do that. Anyone here like to introduce themselves? Yeah, do you want to come up here or
go up.
You gotta, yeah. I will hold the computer up so you don't have to kneel. It is getting uncomfortable. Yeah, I was gonna grab the trash can or something. All right, you wanna come over here? Okay, sure.
I can stand?
Yeah, okay. Stand and hold it.
So I'm Sadia, and I came here first time. I attend couple of sessions online. So I am working in Wells Fargo, just 2 blocks from here. And so this is very convenient for me today. I was happy to made it in person. And my mostly role for over now 5 years, I've been in a Tableau role, and I'm creating visuals and use different ways in Tableau. And it's interesting to see how this tool is being very like leveraging, like every year they're adding new like connectors and new things to make our visuals more better and to automate our system in somewhat ways. And because for last 4 years, which I'm struggling that how to do data cleansing more in tool itself rather than in the SQL environment, because for some reason I don't have even in my current role. So it's good. So then that's what I'm doing. And so only thing is what Tableau functions do you struggle with? It just how to automate especially with the Excel files, if it's a multiple files, and how to aggregate, different data points. That's still a struggle. And nowadays I'm struggling with how to clean up the date function with adding the time zone and all those text things, how to clean up the things. So all those things, it will be great to see in future that if they update, which is making more simpler, just a right click and convert all the strings to really in date functions or anything else. So that's what I'm currently struggling with. But otherwise, I really love this tool, and I always recommend Tableau to be used for the visuals, especially when making graphs.
3 things I recommend that you need in your life: Tableau Prep,
Yeah,
Power Automate,
yeah,
and Jim Daner.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll go back to this since we're almost done. All right. Does anyone want to unmute themselves? Who's online? All right, no worries there. We can always do another session while we're kind of changing speakers or anything like that. But along those lines, I'm going to figure out how to stop sharing my screen. There we go. Stop sharing.
There's someone else named Serena.
Ooh.
We should make her do it. Spelled differently, but
Serena, you've been called out. Do you want to introduce yourself, or do you want to do it maybe as we're bringing up the next presenter? Prepare yourself. All right, Dan, you want to come on up? Okay.
I'll do it from my own channel.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Are you gonna? Okay. I'm gonna sit over there.
Yeah.
All right. I will mute myself, and we'll let Dan take it away.
Hear me okay?
There we go. You guys all hear him? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
great. All right. Thanks, Megan. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for thanks first Twin Cities Tech for having me here. It's really good to be here, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about Tableau extensions with Python. So my name's Daniel Bolinson. I've been working with Baker Tilly since 2015 and have been using Tableau pretty much since that time. I'm a huge fan. You know, we do a lot of work with our clients, usually in like the operations side, trying to help them make better decisions with data. And so we live in a pretty data-rich environment, and there's just not a better tool we found to help communicate some of the insights that we're trying to deliver than Tableau. So it's been a lot of fun to dive into this tool. And another tool that I really love is Python. Does anybody in here use Python or R or VBA? See that a little bit? Awesome. Definitely something that we've really dove deep on. I see a couple of thumbs up online. Awesome. Great tool, and I'm here today to convince you that it's for you too. And I hope it's not too intimidating, and we'll dive in a little bit. I'll share some code on the screen so you can kind of see and get a flavor for what that looks like. I live in Madison, Wisconsin with my wife and 2 daughters and 2 very annoying cats. So it's nice to be up here.
Did you come here just for this?
Well, I tagged on a couple other things,
Okay.
but for the most part.
yeah, I came here just for this.
Yeah, I came here just for this.
Why is that figure?
So first off, let's start with what are Tableau extensions. I don't know if anyone's heard of Tableau extensions. They've been around since about 2018, 2019. And really, they're all about doing more with your Tableau dashboards. So they are web applications. They live inside your dashboard and have two-way communication with your data. So these extensions can read the data that's in your dashboard, and they can set filters, respond to selections, and all that type of stuff. And it's a framework that Tableau's released specifically to let you extend the capabilities of Tableau. So I'll talk today a little bit about like what kind of use cases are typical in that, but really I think that it's all about taking what Tableau is great at and then taking that next step. One of the ways that we think about it is that from our perspective, the best Tableau dashboards help people get insight. And so, all of us are trying to work with data to have our audiences be able to make better decisions or to get some insight based on what's often a pretty overwhelming wave of data. And we're taking that next step then so that they have that insight and can take action from that and from the dashboard. So whether it's making a customer order or whether it's running machine learning model or setting an inventory, max or min, we're trying to create tools that will let people do that right from their Tableau dashboard, which is what extensions are all about. One of the tools that we'll cover today is Anvil. And so Anvil is a full stack framework that helps us build web applications using just Python. So again, I hope that's not too intimidating. I guarantee that it is. I hope you'll see through it that it's not, there's not a lot going on there, but we'll talk more about that. And there's certainly a depth to this tool that's worked really well for us, and it kind of forms the backbone of what I'm going to talk about today. So we'll talk more about it for sure. So, what I really want to leave you with is this idea that we can build Tableau extensions and extend our Tableau dashboards with the skill sets we have today. Previously extensions have typically been, I think, outside of the capabilities of folks. Certainly for me, spent a lot of time trying to build Tableau extensions, and I'm not a web developer. So, they're a JavaScript API, and there's a lot there that I couldn't get through. And so I think with Anvil X, it's been a lot of fun to be able to take a little bit of Python that I know and apply that and be able to really dive into this world of extensions and dive into this world of being able to do more with Tableau. Some of the key things that Anvil offers that makes this really easy is number one, full stack Python. So being able to interact with that dashboard using Python. The ability to persist data. So being able to basically add new data sources that are in your control that you can add data to, and then read that data back into the Tableau dashboard. Writing back to source data. So if you're in an environment, this is always a governance question, but if you're in an environment where you do need to either trigger a stored procedure or want to make make changes to source data, then what we always say is if you can do it in Python, then you can do it with Anvil, and you can usually do it in Python. And finally, it's just a way to create new ways of engaging your users and fostering collaboration. One of the underlying tools that we'll cover is this T-Rex jacket. And there's a resource here that I'm going to link out to that we can hopefully get you links to. But if you search T-Rex jacket, it'll come up. And this is a resource to really help you get started with this stuff. So there's a lot of information here, including some tutorials and guides. It's also going to give you the full background on what you can do with this API. And so we're going to come back to this as I go through the presentation, because this is really the resource for how do I do this thing? It's probably going to be described in here. This T-Rex jacket is an open source project that we're involved with. So it's definitely, if you've got questions, I'd be more than happy to talk further about that. But I think probably the best thing to do is just to dive in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is take a dashboard that I think many of us know and love, which is the Superstore dashboard. So I think many of us have seen this. It's a kind of classic dashboard that people will build. And the objective here is to take the sales data that we have and measure that against the target that's been established. And so, just have to pull this up. Sorry. So, what I'm doing here is just connecting to the Tableau data source that we've generated, and I'll show this again later. So I meant to pull this up before I started. But this is what we have is the Superstore data, which is basically sales data. And so what we want to do is take this sales data and measure against our target. So whether it's an annual target or a quarterly target, whatever it is, we want to see how we performed against that. And it's something that we see a lot of is, we have some amount of data that's coming in from our source sales, and we want to know how we actually did. And so looking backwards and being able to measure against that is a really, really powerful way of understanding, is my forecasting any good? Am I doing what I thought I was going to be able to do? And so what this is showing is, this Newfoundland, we were targeting 554 and we only sold 515. So we missed our target by 7.5%. That's useful, and we want to know that. But what we want to create here is a mechanism where people can enrich this by saying, you know what, it's because we lost a customer. Okay, it's because the target was wrong. It wasn't a realistic target. Whatever that is, we want to be able to enrich this data by capturing some of that user input and layering that in. And we'll do that with Anvil X. So to get started, we'll go to Anvil. Anvil, again, is this tool that we'll use to build web applications using Python. and we can start building. We can set up an account, and we're going to build an Anvil X application, which is a Tableau extension. I already got started a little bit on this, and so I've done a couple of things. Mainly, I've got a table in here where I've established all of the targets that are going to be used for our extension. So we've got all of the different targets that are written in here. And this is now a table that's in Anvil that we can control and we can write back to as and when we need to update those targets, or we need to, again, measure against that variance. So in this case, what we want to do is take this and add that capability for us to be able to really figure out what happened. So this is the Anvil IDE. I've got a bunch of different tools on the left. I've got the data tables that I talked about earlier. And this is sort of our key app explorer where everything is going on in terms of the application that we're going to develop, or this extension that we're going to develop. There's mainly the home page, which is what people are going to see when they first come to our application. And what I'm going to do before I get much further is just press test in Tableau. And this is going to give me the option of running in Tableau server or cloud or in desktop. I'm running in desktop, so it's going to have me download this manifest file. And this is sort of step one to ever building an extension, is getting this manifest file. What this is going to do is basically tell Tableau that, hey, this is an extension that we're running and I trust it, and you should allow it to do what it needs to do to achieve the objective of that extension. So we'll come into our dashboard, and now in our objects here, we can drag in the extension object. This is going to pop up a prompt for me to say, hey, is this an existing extension, or is this one access local extensions that we're building ourselves? So we're building it ourselves, so we'll go access local extensions, and I'm going to point to that T-Rex file that we just downloaded. This is going to pop up this new object in the dashboard, ask me if I want to run that, and I do. So in that case, so what I've done now is I've got that extension that's in Anvil, and it's in my Tableau dashboard. And that's kind of it. So, if we compare this to what you would typically be doing with a more traditional full stack, there's a web server that's running. That's all taken care of for us. We're deploying it to a URL that's taking care of it for us. All we've had to do is say, hey, I want to build this application. Here's my manifest file, and I'm off to the races. There's not a lot going on here yet. I do see what I did before, again, was the ability to set targets. So I can click here, and it's going to load those targets in a dialog box. I could change these if I needed to. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's just, that's a live data connection that's populating our Tableau workbook. And as I start to click through here, I'm going to see in my Anvil environment here the output of what's going on. And I see that, hey, I clicked a worksheet sales map, and it had the following information. So this is streaming real time. As I go through and I click on things, it's going to be populating my console with whatever's going on and whatever's going on in that Tableau workbook and the extension that I'm working on. So makes sense?
So if a user goes in and edits the quota target or something like that, does that only live within that workbook, or would you be able to use it somewhere else?
It lives within the data of the Anvil application that we've developed. Okay. So it is independent of that workbook. You could have multiple workbooks all connected to that data if you needed to.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Specifically, what's going on here is anytime I make a print statement, then it's going to show up right in my console here. So I see that I've got a couple of things going on here. This is where we have to look at some code. I hope that is cool. So the key thing here is that we're taking our T-Rex jacket and we're getting our dashboard. So this function here, we can call to get our dashboard object.
Can it zoom at all?
Sure. Good, thanks for that. That's a good idea.
And so maybe I missed this because I was trying to make sure no one was having problems getting in. But so Anvil is like sort of a Python alternative, but also like this cloud database with write back capability. Is that, am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what it is it's a way to deploy web apps, which extensions are. So it abstracts a lot of that, like kind of the hard work that you would typically need to do to make that work. it's maybe worth mentioning that right now I'm running on Anvil Cloud. There is also an Anvil Enterprise option. So for folks that aren't able to run SaaS, for us, for example, Baker Tilly, we own our own stuff as policy. And so we have our own Anvil environment that runs all our Anvil X applications.
It's pretty expensive.
I think it's like $300 a month for the business license. So the key thing here is getting our dashboard. So if I look at our dashboard object, sorry, you guys know it's live. No kidding. All right, let's try it again. So if I see I've got an autocomplete, that's going to really help me navigate this whole API. Similarly, I can always go and reference this material here to see like what's going on. There's going to be some how-to guides, and the key is the API reference. So I really want to get into the weeds. I can understand all of the different methods that are available to me through that dashboard object. But in this case, we can come in and it's going to autocomplete with all of the different things I can do. All right, we are going to start from scratch. No, you're fine. So I can see here that I can get my data sources, I can get my parameters, I can get my worksheets, I can get my dashboard name, really all of the key objects that exist in that dashboard, all the stuff that's there, the filters and everything. I can go get those and interact with them so I can read their values or set their values depending on what I'm trying to do. In this case, what we're trying to do is capture a way for people to make comments on the data. And so specifically what that means is we want to be able to have somebody click on a state and we want to prompt them to leave a comment. And so to do that, we're going to use this selection change callback. So we see here that we've registered this event handler so that whenever someone makes a selection, a Python function is going to get called. And that type of pattern where it's like someone does something, we're going to trigger a function is really the key idea here. And it's pretty much how we build all of our extensions. Someone's going to do something on the dashboard and we're going to respond to that. So in this case, we've already got our selection change callback, which is, as we saw earlier, printing the marks that got selected here. I'm going to get rid of the filter changed and parameter callbacks because we're not going to use those. And what we're going to do is prompt a way for people to make a comment on that state. And that brings us to our designer view. So this is the way that we can kind of build that UI using a drag and drop interface so that we can capture what we need from people to get this done. So for example, we can pull in labels, we can pull in buttons, we can pull in text areas. There's all sorts of different components that we can have over here that is going to like really help us build out our UI so that we can do what we need to do, which in this case is capture information from somebody. I am going to have to pull in a new manifest file since we had issues with that other. So please bear with me while I do that.
Dan,
Yeah.
while you're pulling this up, and if you get to this later in your presentation, just wondering about like the learning curve for this kind of thing. You could talk through like how you work close to it or how different people can get started in it.
Sure. From my perspective, like I think one of the things that I was hoping to leave people with is the idea that there's a Python function that gets called and that there's this way of interacting with the dashboard object that's really pretty intuitive and is sort of right there from the autocomplete. Whenever I'm doing this type of work, I always find it easiest to just start from something and to make changes to it. So there are a bunch of templates out here. We're basically going to build the Tableau chat extension live today. But you could start from that and modify it to your purposes. The same for the value override extension, which is all about like correcting a data field in the data if you wanted to. It's another way of injecting data into your dashboard.
Are those templates that you created, or was it like, is it a library of templates that other people created?
A library of templates that have been created by myself and others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Is it like, is there any constraints as to like what you can see? It's just.
They are basically they're, you
I
know,
just mean like, it's not like big utility people,
No.
right? Okay.
no, these are, I mean, I think that everything that you do in here is your own. So there's like this, when you're creating a chat extension, you're creating your own instance of that extension that you then make changes to. The data's in your own environment. It becomes yours. You're really working on that.
And then do you get to select like whether it becomes part of the public library or not?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I've not seen that happen actually. I think for the most part, people are building extensions for their own, or more often adapting these types of extensions for their own businesses. So what we're going to do is first we want to show the state that someone selected. We've got a way for them to leave comments. We've got a way for them to save that comment. Well, there's a bunch of different configuration we can do on the right. So we'll have them, give them a save option. These names here are the names that they're going to appear in our Python code. And so it's helpful to give these like clear names. So I'm going to say text area comment, label, state, and we are going to drag a table in as well. That's going to show the comments that have already been left. And we probably want to know when they were left on. So that's kind of the key building blocks of our UI. And now what we want to do, and we'll reload this so we can see that, what we want to do is make it responsive to the selection that someone makes so that when they do select that, two things are going to happen. We're going to give them the option to save that data, and we're going to give them the way to see all the other comments that have been made by other people working in this. So right now, nothing's going on because we haven't wired that up yet. But what we'll do is we will give them the mechanism to do that. So what we'll do is we're going to add a new data table for our comments. We need to record the state, and we'll keep that as a text. We're going to record the comment, and we're going to record when that comment was left on. So what we're doing here is we're defining a new data table that then exists in our application. We can connect to Tableau, and that's what we saw earlier. This is pretty powerful what we just did. We're basically defining a schema in a database that we can now connect to in Tableau. So that's pretty cool, and it really opens up a lot of doors from use cases perspective. And what we can now do is in our code, we want to take it so that when someone saves this button, we're going to add a new row to that data table. So we'll go app tables dot, we need to reload here. Tables dot comments. Haven't seen it.
Keeps it interesting.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it worked perfectly every time you tried it before this, didn't it?
You know it. All right, add row. So now we can add row, and we want to leave the comment that someone left, which is in our text area. We might also want to capture when they did, so we can import the datetime library. I don't know if folks are too familiar with that, but most Python modules are available to us. So there's a whole wealth of capabilities we can get from that. Datetime. And we want to know which state was selected. So we're going to have to change our callback so that we can go and get the actual state that was selected when someone did make a selection. So here we can basically capture that data as self.state, and we'll make that the event.getSelectedMarks. We'll take the first one. If someone did select a bunch of states, we're just going to take the first one arbitrarily. And we can capture then the state or province, which we know is in that data from the print statement we got below. And we can use that state for capturing that in the data here. So if I did my job right, can reload this now. And we can say, hey, Nevada, negative 6.7, we lost a key customer. And we'll save that. Now I did something wrong. So we can go down and we see permission denied. So two things are going to happen here. First, we can come to our console and we see that we had an error. And we can click on this and it's going to bring us directly to the line of code where we have that issue. So as you're learning this and as you're figuring this out, between the print statements and the ability to jump right to that error line is a really, really powerful way of kind of starting to navigate it.
Line 4 and 21.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I forgot to do was I've made this, I couldn't access this table from client code. So I'm going to change that and hopefully can reload this. Say Manitoba, tough quarter. Save. We get a scroll wheel. Now nothing's happened. We haven't, this comments table is not populated because we haven't told it to. But if we come in here, we see that we have captured that data in our data table. So the next thing we need to do is to show that data, and we'll create a new function, show data.
Is it important? Do you have to do that first and then go in and say show data, or could you have just done that?
I could have just done that. Yeah, I definitely could have just done that. Yeah. And what we'll do is we can take our app tables, our comments, and we can search that with that state that we captured earlier. And we want to show data basically whenever someone makes a new comment or when someone makes a selection. Let's get that full screen. So now what we have is basically the full application that we set out to build. So I'm going to reload one more time. Anytime I make a change, I got to reload. We can go to Nevada, say quarter here too. Click save, and it didn't pop up. So what have I done wrong now? Well, I will think I'll move on to the final version. Having some issues there, obviously. What this is this is sort of that baked example that we were trying to work towards. So we can see here on our right, we're capturing those comments. We can, and I've also added here the ability to choose reasons. So for example, for Nevada, we might say, hey, Nevada, we didn't make our target because of a stock out, and we'll save that. And that's then going to populate this variance commit tornado here. So this is going to basically build us that understanding of why we missed our target over time. The way that we've done that is we took that data that was being collected in Anvil, and we've joined it through a cross-database join in with our original sales data so that we can use that as a field, and it's sort of right there for us to then do what we need to do and to measure against that target. And this is how we could, like right now we've just captured targets overall, but if we wanted to, and in many cases you're trying to capture targets at a customer level or whatever it is, that same technique and the same stuff that I'm showing here are all the same ways that you would go about and do that.
So high level steps
Yeah.
to get here.
Mm-hmm.
You are creating a target visual in Tableau desktop. You are then going out to Anvil and creating the schema and the UI for the data input. But somehow you're bringing in the metadata of that target sheet from Tableau, right? So there's this.
There's the two-way communication there, yeah.
Two-way communication. So then once you've got the schema and that data source set up, you're then going back to Tableau and modeling that data into your. Is that like at high level?
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, and that's key because what that means is we have this data source that we can kind of make changes to in whatever way our dashboard needs it to from our Anvil page here, and that's updating this dashboard as we go and do that sort of real time. Does that make sense? Like, anybody? Makes tons of sense, makes no sense at all.
You can update the existing visual also. Like currently you added a new kind of data visual, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do other way around, like you can update the existing one also.
Mm-hmm. Like the existing targets, do you mean?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So if I go to my final version,
It's like a circular reference, right?
yeah. If I go to my targets and I say, hey, you know what, Alabama, we only wanted that to be 12,000. So that's saved, 120,000. We've saved that to our data table. And now when we refresh this, sales target, refresh, we're looking for Alabama, which is going to expose I'm not American, so geography is appalling.
Did you say you're not American?
I'm not, no. I'm from Canada. I've been in the US for a while, so I should know my geography better than I do, but Alabama was a poor choice.
Most of us don't know Canadian geography,
Yeah,
so.
you'd be surprised. I mean, we've got like 5, 6 provinces. Thank you.
But if you saw that, Alabama just went dark blue because that target was updated. Yeah, and similarly, as we're going through and we're like populating our reasons, those reasons are being updated so that everybody who's using this dashboard is seeing that same data. And the key is kind of we've enriched that data with the application that we've added in so that that type of, that we've made that possible. And I would say that we've done that with like, I know that we've, probably, there's code here, right? It's a pro code solution, but I think that it's a couple of lines and the autocomplete really is helpful. So I really do hope that people aren't feeling too intimidated by that. And, that's kind of, there's a whole lot of capabilities and that get a whole lot of power that gets unlocked with, not that much code. I hope that.
So how does, this might be a sticky question, but how does the security tax, or like obviously you guys set limit the number of people who are able to go and change numbers, otherwise you're just gonna have everybody, overwriting everybody's
For sure.
input. So does that security start on the Anvil side and get passed to Tableau, vice versa, or do they remain separately managed?
I would say that in general they remain separately managed, but Anvil, in an enterprise instance, most typically there's SSO in place. And so Anvil, we haven't covered that because, it tried to, but there's a user service that is basically the first step in any application in terms of making it secure, is figuring out who your users are and then allowing them permissions based on that. So, probably very few people are allowed to set targets. And what we would typically control that through our users by identifying who they are and then establishing if they should have the right to click that button or not.
So the users, like the security, is at the user level and like the field level, like it can be that granular. So like everybody can leave comments because there's not, but only specifics that people can change targets in those two cases.
Yeah. I would say that that's like your responsibility when you're building the application to think about. But that's absolutely like we would, I think it's going to look like if this user has this permission, then update this row, otherwise don't. And so we can like to put that into maybe practice, we would say like, page, let's say we only wanted for some reason certain people to be allowed to leave a comment. When somebody clicks this button, we would say like if our anvil.users.getUser, which is going to give us the user who's currently logged in, like is admin, then do this. So with that change, we've secured that code so that it's only being callable by somebody who has a specific permission. I think that Anvil's like there's a lot there in terms of how you do that type of stuff and how you do it elegantly. I think I'd love to talk more about that. I could talk for ages and I don't want to do that because I know Megan's gonna deliver too. So maybe we can take does anybody, so I guess maybe the two things that I would conclude on the security side is you can run Anvil Enterprise and all of the permissioning is done through a user, through like a user registration mechanism, user SSO. So I think we've covered some of those key takeaways. I think I should probably wrap up.
Yeah, I to Katrina's point, like if you could just talk a little bit more about what were the resources that you really leaned into as you were getting started? It's
Sure.
just like, I'm gonna Google it and find some YouTube videos.
The-
Are there niche resources?
I think this is the number one resource that I would direct people to. And this is going to have, like, there's a recommended learning path, which we'll talk about, like, hey, if you've never done this before, here's how to dive in. And I'm a real learner by doer, or learner by doing. And so going through these tutorials, they're going to walk you through how to build an extension. And I think that there's just no better way to learn it than to do it. And so these tutorials are going to give you, like, building a chat extension. Again, that's basically what we just did today. And this is going to go like step by step how you go about doing that. And I think that throughout, it'll try to give you some more of the background about, like, what's actually going on here, so that you can kind of dig deep where you want to dig deep, and as you go, learn a little bit about that. There's also a ton of information in the Anvil forums. So, I think there's just a huge amount of good people out here who will answer questions, and as you dig in, then that's a resource. And at the end of the day, if you've got a question on Python, Stack Overflow has an answer. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of.
Can you describe a use case between Anvil and Tableau that doesn't involve Python? That does not involve, is there a use case for you using what Anvil can do with Tableau that doesn't include a Python script?
I don't think so, because Anvil's fundamentally Python. Like, I think that that's their sort of secret sauce, is the ability to do the type of stuff that we showed here with Python,
So you could
as
use
opposed to
Python
needing to
without
do.
knowing that it was-
Right. I mean, I think that the key is that these types of, like, okay, how do I do something? Well, I probably start with my dashboard, and I probably need to, like, get a worksheet. And if you call these things with, like, the wrong worksheet name, then you're going to get an error that's going to helpfully sort of try to redirect you. So let's try to reload that, and we'll see what happens. Oh, I got an error. What happened here? All right, worksheet, wrong worksheet doesn't exist. Here's the worksheets. So there's a lot of trial and error on this stuff. And I think that working through that with, like, leveraging the kind of prompts that you get is kind of the key to getting through that learning curve. And asking for help. That's what we're here for. That's what we do a lot of, is helping people get through that learning curve and get successful in this.
Cool. Do we have any questions from our? I don't see any.
So
Did you
I have a question. So I know this is the connector, right? And which we use for Python and connection with Tableau.
Yeah.
I did use Python to call the worksheet, and basically I use as a kind of ETL.
Okay.
So what I did is I just so I want to load everything from Tableau and from different three data sources, other than SQL, Teradata, and Oracle, and put in central kind of query.
Okay.
The platform like SQL, get that. So for that, I used to call, I use Anaconda, and I used to call the script from the Tableau server, and which I put the schedule for daily, and it load the file.
Cool.
Pick the file from there, and it pick the file from the other location, and load the data in the central database stage table which I put. So what's the difference in doing that when I'm calling that and script, and then have the leverage of this one? What is the difference between that?
So the difference is that this is specifically targeting use cases where that needs to be in the dashboard. So if you're running, like, a data engineering pipeline, this isn't the tool you'd use. This is the tool when, like, you are trying to leverage the extension framework to do more with your Tableau dashboard.
Like you need a user interface. on top
You
of
need it, yeah. Or you, like, Tableau, I think one of the ways that we've thought about this is it's like takes Tableau from being a dashboarding tool to being a data products tool, because you're building capabilities within this dashboard that people know and love that lets them do things they didn't think they could otherwise do, be it like forecasting or what if analysis or target setting or writing back to source data or running machine learning models. Like, those are some of the different use cases that we've worked on in the past. There are a couple of case studies we've got published. We covered most of this stuff. I would say that, in terms of some of the other benefits of this, it comes with GitHub integration. So as you get into version control, I think what Anvil does a nice job of is it gives you like an easy way to get started, and there's a depth there as you go deeper. And so I'm really happy to stick around and talk to folks who have any other questions. Here's my contact. Here's a link to the T-Rex jacket, and you can learn more about how we help people with this at our website too. Does anybody have any other final questions? Otherwise, I'll be sticking around afterwards.
Does Anvil pay you to be here?
No. It's a fair question.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. If there aren't any more questions, we can let you off the hook.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone's time today.
Just gonna plug my laptop in so it doesn't die and the meeting ends. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, what was it?
I was wondering if you noticed that.
Yeah, I was just like watching it, waiting for it to get a little more red. But yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. I don't feel intimidated by that process. I think to me it really seemed like parameter actions on steroids, kind of. And the other thing that I would say is that I think that people probably know more Python, or like would be able to adapt it easier, especially if you think about how functionality, or like you're already calling functions in Tableau, sort of, if you think about it that way.
Yeah.
And so if you can build parameters, I think like that's definitely something to look into, and just to try to, as you're saying, expand the functionality in those use cases. Definitely some interesting stuff. But all right, Megan, you are up next. I'm gonna mute myself, and you can.
Okay, yeah, just let me know. Can everybody hear me? Sweet. All right, well, let me share my screen. All right, awesome. I can even see it through Katrina's laptop that you can all see it, so perfect. Well, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to the TUG leaders, Katrina and Serena, and I think there's a few others. So just really wanted to thank you for inviting me to speak today. And awesome job, Dan. I was really interested in hearing about, Python and Tableau extensions. So I'm definitely going to try to test that out soon. All right, but I will be talking about dynamic zone visibility. Before that, though, just a quick intro about myself. Since you can see my face, I put a picture of my cats there, because everybody loves cats, and if you don't, you can just leave at any time. But anyway, I work for PH Data. I'm a senior analytics consultant. I've been using Tableau since 2017, so about 6-7 years. Some of my interests, which you'll quickly see about reading, is one of them. But other stuff I like to do include basketball, lifting, cooking, and playing with my cats. I have a couple of QR codes there in case you're interested in connecting. I don't post too much on either LinkedIn or Tableau Public, but I'm hoping to, at least put a few dashboards out every once in a while on Tableau Public. And often my coworkers are doing really cool things, so I'll share that on LinkedIn. All right, so what is dynamic zone visibility? So first of all, big QR code on the screen. This goes to a blog that one of my colleagues wrote about the topic, which is kind of more of like a step-by-step thing you can follow along. So definitely recommend that. But otherwise, just sit back and listen about how I want to describe dynamic zone visibility. Also, it's going to be a mouthful. So sometimes I might just say dynamic zoning. Sometimes I might just say zone visibility. Either way, it's always going to be a mouthful. Anyway, this was released in 2022, but even though that was a few versions back, in my mind, and I think a lot of developers, see this as a technique or a tool that you have that is probably the most impactful out of all the releases since I thought about it, maybe like the last 2 years. You could probably even go back further than that and say it's probably the biggest thing to be released since parameter actions. And part of that is because it gives the user a lot of ability to show or hide parts of the dashboards, which they just call zones. I think it's kind of ambiguous because it doesn't mean just containers. It doesn't mean, like it's basically any dashboard element that you can hide with a click. And then it also gives developers the ability to leverage parameters in new ways. Some of the limitations there is that for dynamic zone visibility to work, it has to be either Boolean, a single value, or use something like an LOD that returns a single value. And before I go on about showing some use cases of what it is, I kind of wanted to go through how I view this in context of Tableau over time. And caveat this with saying dynamic zone visibility has a little bit more than just how it works with parameters, but I look at it as like the most game-changing when you use it with parameters. So over on the far left, we have what parameters are generally used for. So you use it to kind of swap things, often given to the end user who's actually using your dashboard. They can click different options to be able to swap metrics, swap marks, sheets even, filters, function arguments. There's probably more that I haven't thought of that can be swapped using traditional parameters just as they are. But then in 2019, parameter actions were released. And this really elevated the game because now you can turn a lot of different things into essentially a parameter by using parameter actions. You can have a click or even a hover, drive the change of a parameter, which can then update things further on in the dashboard and just gives a really good user experience overall. This also allowed for people to kind of hack a solution for multi-select parameters. And now in 2022, I look at the next big change in parameters, like what we can do with them. So now with the dynamic zone visibility in conjunction with parameters, you can, like I mentioned before, have this great show hide element that we sort of did have before, but now it has even more power. And then also kind of a side note I put on here, without parameters being used, dynamic zone visibility is also great for implementing user security. So I'll talk about that too in a little bit. And what's next for parameters? Who knows? It's funny because I didn't even think about like Tableau extensions, but kind of what Dan was going over, and then Katrina, you mentioned how it's kind of like using parameters. So maybe that's kind of where the next phase of it will go. But I just put a couple of maybe ideas out there. Maybe we'll have just not like non-sheet objects be able to change parameters dynamically when you click them. Like I think about the buttons that you can create when you have somebody download something to Excel, or just a text object or something like that. Or maybe Tableau will eventually have the option to have parameters have multiple values. And then maybe there's just going to be more parameter types for dynamic zone visibility as well. So that's kind of my little bit of history of how I see this. And now kind of the real meat about understanding what this is and how you can use it are these use cases. So for the most of today, I'm going to be going over this dashboard that I built specifically for this presentation. So this is my reading stats dashboard. And in this, I have at least 3 different options for how to use dynamic visibility. So I'm going to first go over the dashboard, show you how it works and like what's going on, how to read the dashboard. And then we're going to just go through how to build some of those elements. So let me open up the dashboard. So first I'll go over this. You have at the very top these different KPIs of different reading metrics that I like to keep track of. You can see I have this year selected, but I have the option to look at last year, all time, which makes this look kind of hard to read. And then also a custom date range, which, spoiler alert, for the first bit of dynamic zone visibility, that caused these 2 second parameters to pop up. I'm going to hide that, go back to this year for now. And then here, this next option, you can see we have these different options is prompting you to click. This first one is selected to see this waterfall, basically a timeline of when I read a book. And when you hover, you can see like, oh, this one really was a slog to get through. Maybe it took a long time. But then the other options here, so this is book categories. So these are just things that I like to keep track of for the books I read. I have like which ones are classics, fiction versus nonfiction, audiobooks versus physical books. And then I decided to make like a little bookshelf out of these. So if you wanted to go and, see some of the nonfiction ones that I read in this time period, you could do that for any of these. I'll go back to fiction. And then the last one here is another thing that's really important to me. So a quick little history of my own reading. I've always been a reader, but it wasn't until I actually started keeping track of the data that I've been reading that I noticed, wow, like 70% of the books I read are by white men. And no offense to white men at all. I know you have a lot to contribute, but I want to hear all kinds of voices. I want to, diversify my own reading. So I just started keeping track of this. And I'll just caveat that, when it comes to, like you'll see, I have a BIPOC category here. I try my best to, Google responsibly, find people when they self-identify, as a certain race, for instance. And just because with things like LGBTQ status, there's no way I can know that about authors, right? So I just put, if it's an LGBTQ book, I kind of kept track of that too. So you can see here I have, just of this year again, just on that, this is the percentage of books I read by gender minority authors. So that's like women plus trans non-binary folks. Percentage of BIPOC authors, and then percentage of books with LGBTQ themes. Over on the right, you can see those actual authors listed out, and you can, toggle between the different, categories that you might be interested in looking at. And then this bottom one over here is kind of getting at a different look of diversity. So like how old the book is. So I basically looked at the time it was published until the time I read it and calculated the years. So like a lot of the ones this year that I've been reading are very new, but some of them, this one, Wuthering Heights, is almost 200 years old. So that one really sticks out. So yeah, this one's just kind of meant to capture diversity. But as you can see, like when I went through those different options, it shows very different charts. You can, I'm in Tableau Desktop, so you can see when I hover, I have all these different containers. I have different parameters. These are actually floating. And so this one goes away when I click on another option. So these are all instances of dynamic zone visibility. And I want to kind of go over how to build this with you. And I created a second version. So this is a bit cluttered. We got to clean it up, try and hide the parts to, show what we want to show at one time. The easiest one to do first is right here, how to hide these. So basically when when the time range is custom, that's when I want to show this, right? So let's go over to a sheet, and we're going to make a new calculated field. And we're simply going to just say in like a Boolean fashion what I just verbally said. So we want the time range to equal custom. Let me zoom that in a little bit. And so we can call this one something like, I like to put the word visibility in here just so that like it's easy for me to find. So I might just say visibility custom. Okay, and I'm not doing anything with this. I'm not bringing it onto a sheet or anything. I'm just going over to my dashboard. Make sure to click on the whole container that contains both of these. And then over here in the layout section, there's this option to control visibility using value. And you can see there's that new calculated field we just made. The fact of it being Boolean makes it show up here. So I'm going to click that, and already it just disappeared because that's not selected. And you can just test it, make sure it comes back. Great, looks good. All right, so that one was the easy one. Now we have, what about this one? We have 3 different options. I kind of did some of the easy work already. I put them all in the containers to make it look nice so that when we do eventually hide them, it should look pretty much like the dashboard I just showed you. But we still need to make sure everything's hidden appropriately. So to do this, the first thing that I would do is to make a parameter. I've already done that to, basically go with these click actions up here. So let's go over to our sheet, and I believe that one is called book categories. Oh wait, sorry, I think we're on book types. All right. Oh, no, that's not the right one. Viz view. There we go. So these are our 3 different viz views that we're working with. And now the only tricky part with dynamic zone visibility is right now we have basically 3 zones that we're going to be toggling through. So that means we should have 3 different calculated fields. This isn't something you can do all in one calculated field. So I end up doing a lot of duplicating. So we might call this one visibility. We can even say like equals identity. And then this one's called viz view. Oops. Okay. So that's our first one. And again, you can see it's Boolean, it's returning true, false. So I'm just going to duplicate that. Go to edit. I think another one we had was categories. Or category, I think. Yep, and then the last one's waterfall. It's a little bit tedious, but it will have a nice payoff, hopefully. All right, so now with those 3 created, we can try to go in here and apply that control to each of these sheets. And again, make sure you're grabbing all of the containers, everything that's related to that to get this to work. So the first one here is just a single sheet. That's the easier one. So we're going to click this option and then find waterfall. And just for now, I'm going to actually show the parameters so we know what it is for viz view. So right now it's on identity, but if we switch back to waterfall, it pops back up. So I'm going to go back to identity and let's do the book categories one. So, oh, too many. So we're going to do this whole set, control visibility. That one is category. And so now it disappears. And then lastly, we want to do this section and identity. All right, so now if we switch between our different options, you can see that it is working as expected. And hopefully my click actions still work. Yep, so that works as well. We don't really need this anymore, just going to get rid of it. And then the last thing was these little floating different parameters that I had that are kind of subsequent. These act just like any other zone that we've been working with. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this one on because this one belongs to the categories sheet. And same thing, I'm going to go here. We don't have to make a new calculated field. We just use the same one, visibility equals category. Yep, so that went away. And then same thing here. I'm going to bring this where we want it. And visibility is equal to identity. All right, so now we have pretty much a full functioning dashboard that has all of the elements hidden when we want them to be hidden, shown when we want them to be shown. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the demo part. Before I move on to other use cases, are there any questions about this dashboard or some of the dynamic zone visibility tricks that I showed? Just looking at some of the comments.
We've got a question here, Megan.
Sure.
I'll try to talk loud. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm just wondering, can you go into the click actions a little bit and just show, like, are those just icons that you brought in and you assign click actions to each one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go to this sheet. This is actually a secondary data source that I just literally pasted in here. So it just has our 3 values. Like if we actually show the header here, you can see I just gave them the same names as my parameter. And then in here, the action is just this change parameter action. I don't think I can make this bigger, but basically the only sheet that's selected, or at first I have my source sheet is the dashboard itself, and then it's when the shapes sheet is clicked, and then it's going to change the target parameter viz view, and the field that I'm using is that one that I pasted in that is from my my secondary data source. And when we click off, I just have it keep the current value. Yeah, so that's really what's driving a lot of that change. A good question. Anything else?
I've got a question about so I noticed that you gave an example of like, it's taking up the full space as well as a floating one. Is there a way to say like, when this parameter said I want it to take up this much space versus a larger amount of space, like control size of it? Or could you just do that through small, medium, large?
Yeah, so I think you could possibly control the space. I'm just trying to think if I could do an example here quickly. I would say, if we were going to hide, say this column, this would automatically take up the rest of the view. But if we set it to be like a fixed width, it would still slide over, but it would be this size. It wouldn't stretch to be the rest of the view. So you could control it that way. I don't know if there's anything that could like limit the sliding over. I would probably do something hacky, like if I wanted this to just be blank space, if I got rid of it, I would put like a blank object in here and have it be dynamic zone visibility, but in reverse. So it would show when this thing hides. So yeah, there's different ways you could play around with that. I would recommend using like fixed width and stuff like that when working with it. And that's one good thing to notice too about dynamic zone visibility, because if you've ever used like sheet swapping or you're trying to hide sheets in the past, a lot of this flexibility with using like fixed width or fixed height, it wasn't possible because like you would need to have it, like it might go blank, but it would still be taking up that space. So that's something here where if it does actually hide, even though it is fixed width, it would go away through dynamic zone visibility. So that's a really good question. All right. For the sake of time, I'm going to just hop over back to my presentation here. I think here. And we're just going to go through a few more use cases that I didn't have implemented in my dashboard, but I found in other places on Tableau Public. So the first really obvious one is that you can do some great like messaging or different labels. You can kind of show and hide those. So this is one by Pradeep Kumar G. It's just a really simple kind of like way to declutter, just hide those legends, when you don't want them to be there. And what's really elegant about it is that you're just simply using the same button depending on the two different dashboards that he's toggling through. Whereas before, if you were trying to use, just show hide containers, you would need a separate button for each of these different views. So that's just like something really minor, but really nice. And you can like do way more than just this. This is just like a really easy example. This is probably the one that really excited most people when they heard about this. They're like, oh, we can do this now. So this is kind of called like dynamic zooming. It's basically where if you have a smaller, something taking up less space, but you want it to have the ability to take up more real estate, and maybe when it does, you actually put extra context or information into that viz. That's exactly what this is doing. And so I think Sam Parsons was kind of the first one, or maybe one of the first ones, I can't be sure about that, to get out a dashboard that does this type of thing. I will say one of my coworkers actually just came out with a way to do this using even like less stuff. So it's a little bit more performant. He's writing a blog on it. So look for that. And what's really nice about this is it's kind of already utilizing some UI, UX design that we're probably all familiar with, just with like other apps and websites, but able to give that kind of look and feel to a Tableau dashboard. A similar kind of UI, UX design hack that is used, especially on phones, I think, which Lisa Trescott's doing here really well, is this accordion menu. So just basically toggling through different options, having it fill the space, and still always showing those other options that are there. And hers is really nice in that she also adds like those arrows and color to really make it clear, what's being selected. So again, just another great use of dynamic zone visibility. All right, and then the one that is kind of harder to show because you really need to have an instance of row level security to sort of try this out. But I think the same type of thing just generally goes with, you could try this with like just a standard filter if you really wanted to instead of a username filter. But basically, if you do have some kind of user restrictions, so in this case, I have two different examples. I have just one where it's just using my name. So if it's my name, then we want to make this true, but for other people, we want to make it false. So maybe you would have a whole section of your dashboard that executives can see, but non-executives can't see. And that's actually a little bit more easy to use when we're looking at, groups. So if you have really good, really well-defined groups at your organization in Tableau Server, this is something that would be really powerful. Because if you think about it, how you might have had to do it before, let's say you have a sales hierarchy, you have maybe like territory managers, regional managers, and national managers. Well, in the past, you might have to make 3 different dashboards for them, but now you could have it all be in one dashboard and just have the different views hidden based on what their role is. So that's like a really great example of how this could be really powerful. And again, this one, there's no parameters involved here. So again, I like to think of dynamic zone visibility as a great thing for parameters, but it certainly doesn't have to be. All right, so that was all I had. Any other questions on any of these examples or anything that I talked about today?
All right. No. So I don't see any questions in here. I don't see any. There we go.
Thanks, Dan. If a worksheet is hidden in a hidden zone, does it still get loaded? I actually don't know that one. So I mean, I wasn't working with data that was like very hard to perform anyway, but I had to say like just creating it and working with it, I didn't notice like it acting slower the more I stacked onto it. But that is a really good question. I think that's something I want to research and maybe get back to this group. We can give the answer in the next tug or something like that.
Serena is saying we can ask through certain channels.
Answer. I hear the Fleurlage twins have some connections.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
We'll find some.
I am right.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Just also want to call in the chat that those are really great examples, Megan, and it was really easy to follow. So thank you so much for presenting. Again, if in the chat, if you have any questions, feel free to put that in there. And be sure to reach out to Megan if you think of anything else, as well as check out those examples that she put on there. Oh, there's another. Matt just put another link to a video in there. And that's such a great point. Like, there's so much great content out there where not only do you have to go through certain channels to find the information, but it's usually somewhere out there.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we said 4 was the end, right? Okay, so we've got about a solid 8 minutes. If anyone has any tips or tricks or questions that they have, or any other questions for the presenters that you maybe thought of later, I will just call out that I feel like today's theme was look at cool stuff you can do in parameters, and there's so much more to Tableau than just billboard consuming analytics, just looking at a line chart, a bar chart, but you can interact with it as well.
I'm curious if anyone has built a dashboard where the primary intended use case was for it to be displayed on a touch screen in like a public area.
Can you guys hear the question or the commentary at all?
Yeah, I've been hearing questions pretty all right.
All right, that's good.
Done that. I would love to hear your experience, what your I did it once like 3 years ago, and I feel like there's probably maybe a better approach with this, at this point in time. So if you have done it, please reach out to me.
Seems like an interesting challenge to try and plan for.
I come across it every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want to do with this dashboard. Usually it's like, do you really want to
Yeah.
do that?
Are you sure?
I'm not sure if you do. But
Yeah.
This one it actually is like, okay, this is what you want to do with this particular dashboard. Lee,
Serena, are you talking about a kiosk?
it is not a kiosk. No. No, and when I say that, it's just a TV. You just like that, right? And sort of like a lobby of a building, and the information would be there would be data about the building itself, like the energy and utility consumption of the building, and just showing like some of the return on some of the like the green energy investments that they've made. So,
What problems did you run into when you were implementing it before? What made it difficult?
well, I think the two things were making sure that the browser refreshed automatically, right? Second thing we had to get through was the security of it, right? At least in a way that wasn't gonna raise any alarms within Tableau and how they're what their license agreements. We should probably stop recording. And then like just from a design perspective, like some of the things are a lot harder to do with a finger than like a mouse.
Right.
Like drop down filters. So, like maybe we have two different versions of the dashboard, and one is meant for this screen and people's got fingers, and one is more like traditional. So that's kind of where my head's at right now with it. But
Yeah.
I'm just checking to see if anybody else like, yeah, I do that in my sleep.
Definitely not. I'm at a much more basic level. I'm trying to, I've made a drill down bar chart kind of a thing. And there are two things. One is it goes like state, city, county, or something like that. So most states in the country probably have a Washington County, and there's also a Washington State. So that messes with the filtering, or the sorting rather. And then the other ask that I'm trying to figure out is how to convert this into a map so that someone can say, like, I want to zoom in on California, because they're trying to use this to redesign sales territories. So they want to be able to say, okay, we want to know where in California these zip codes are so that we can group them together in some way. So I would say, quite close to a beginner stage, if not still a beginner. So I've been struggling with trying to figure out how to make this bar chart into a map that does the same things that the bar chart does.
Do you have in your data you've got like on the same row you've got city, state, county, right? Like each row of data can identify all levels of that hierarchy. Okay, then it should know the difference between the like Washington this or Washington that, right?
I don't know. Like, I don't have county enabled on this right now, or I'd show you, but when I tried to put county on there, it's like California worked, but then other states didn't, because it was always like some state name that's a county in that state.
You might need to add
and
like
there's
one of those hierarchies to the detail shelf.
Yeah, are you like switching does your bar chart show state at one point and then the next step would be showing county?
Or
city?
It would if I had that enabled right now, but yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
a bar chart? Will I get in trouble if I look at it?
No, I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yes.
Because I think, like, to Serena's point, you need to like tell Tableau
Yeah,
that
so-
these two things are different.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of, the county isn't in here right now, but it's like you click on state, and then click on city, and then
So
you
you
got
got that
the
defined
zip
as a
codes.
state, right?
Yeah.
As a geo. And you got that as a geography. That is a geography field.
Yeah.
Okay, so, the state.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah, then this is
City.
city, company
the city
city.
is this level 1 headed, level 2?
Yeah, something like that. I just did this off of a video, to be honest. And then, but basically, I wanted to be able to say all of these zip codes are in San Francisco. And, then they were like, "Can you make this in a map?" Because they used to have a agreement with a company that basically they would be able to make a map out of the data. They don't have that agreement anymore. They're like, "Can you make this in Tableau? And we don't have to pay any more money for it."
Can I touch?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just gonna make it a new sheet.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we'll let that
Yeah, this might be
continue
super
on
basic for
offline.
some
That's okay.
people, but-
Since we are basically at time, just want to be cognizant of that and say thank you to everyone who attended in person as well as virtually. We do record these sessions and present those later. So if you saw something in one of the presentations and you want to dive into it later, just look for that on the Tableau site. So thanks again and have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
And thank you, Katrina.